Welcome. This is the Midlife Rising podcast. Tell me if you know this feeling. You're starting to feel a brain fog at work where you've got those moments of memory loss, or you can't do enough in the day or as much in the day as you used to be able to do. So you're starting to really wish you had your youth back, even though you know that aging is a good thing because you've got all this experience behind you. And in life, you're starting to feel this too, like a little bit less relevant or a little bit invisible, just wishing you could have your old self back. In this episode, Sheri and I are unpacking this story we've been told that patriarchy has told us about aging and how, especially for women, it is a decline. We're going to turn this myth on its head based on research in anthropology, on some remote tribes that are still living the way our Paleolithic ancestors used to live, on the biology that totally flips this script, and a new hypothesis about aging that is going to leave you a little bit feisty maybe after this episode, because you will feel like you can step into your power instead of feeling like this whole I'm past my prime and it's all downhill from here. So if you're ready for that, then stay with us. This is a good one. You're a woman over 40 who spent your life being the one who holds it all together. But now your body's changing and your soul is done pretending everything is fine. Welcome to Midlife Rising. We're your hosts, Sheri and Jen, twin sisters and modern medicine women, here to help you rewire your stress response, balance your hormones, and reclaim your feminine power. Every episode is a rebellion against the rules you never agreed to and a return to yourself. Join us where midlife isn't a crisis, it's a catalyst. Hey, I feel like it's been forever since we recorded together.
It has been forever.
So for our listeners, I was doing some work at a school. And so I had a lot of interactions with parents of young children. And I have noticed, so a lot of these parents are, because I'm an old mom, I shouldn't say it that way, but I had my kid when I was 45. So I tend to be a lot like a decade older than the other moms with kids the same age as mine. And I have noticed, which I didn't notice before, how many of them, so they'd be in their 40s, are getting Botox.
Yes, I have noticed that.
It wasn't, and this is, our listeners are going to find out why this is so relevant to today's discussion, but I hadn't really noticed it before. Like I was just, I don't know. And I just noticed somebody the other day who had obviously just gotten it done, and it's kind of more noticeable the day after or whatever. And it looked like just a little too tight kind of. And I was like, oh my God, that person's getting Botox. I had no idea. And I keep noticing more and more of them.
I think it's becoming rampant, and you really notice it in Hollywood. And you can start to pick out the signs after a little while. You know, you see a couple of people who have had it done, and then you just see it everywhere. It's like you can't unsee after you've noticed what it is. Yeah.
It's the next level of anti-aging that's becoming more normalized now. Like it wasn't 10 or 20 years ago, it was around for sure, but it was more of a Hollywood thing, or more of like, for a few people who were like really concerned about their youthful appearance. And now it's like, it's as common as dyeing your hair.
Yeah. And there are many other types of the anti-aging types of, what's the word I'm looking for? Treatments available.
Like, yeah, that's
you'd
true.
Be surprised. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and some of the things that she was talking about, I just was shocked at what women are doing to their bodies, not just their faces, but other parts of their bodies, in an effort to maintain youthful appearance.
I know, it's crazy. Okay, so Cher, why is this conversation relevant to what we wanted to talk about today?
Well, I'm really excited and fascinated by this concept, this hypothesis that I actually came across upon reading a book I want to say 14 years ago, back in like 2012. And it has taken on new meaning today because it's really all about where ageism is coming from and how it's just Western culture that's being affected by this. There isn't this whole anti-aging culture in other parts of the world outside of Western culture. There may be some exceptions, but that's generally the rule. And I'm really fascinated about this. And you and I have been talking a lot about our Paleolithic ancestors and how we actually live in a body that is largely still the same as our Paleolithic bodies, our ancestors. And so I'm really fascinated by I suppose, the efforts that we can make to try to live a little more closely to that way of living and how that has made me feel so far. And part of that is not just what we consume, what we take into our bodies, what we do to our bodies, but it's also the way we feel about our bodies. And that's very different. That was very different for I can't say exactly how somebody felt about their body, but there's lots of anthropological research, even in today's tribes that are very remote, where we can see how elders are, or even midlife women. I don't even consider myself to be an elder, but how midlife women are, or menopausal women are treated.
Okay. So to sum up what you said, you're basically saying that the way that we have been looking at our bodies, at aging in Western culture is not consistent with the way that we evolved to be.
Yep, exactly. And there's evidence of that in some of today's existing tribes, cultures, right, that have just not been exposed to Western culture.
The reason, Cher, this is so important today is that it's making so many women, like we've had these conversations in our online program, in my in-person women's circles, that people are, like women are feeling irrelevant as they age. They're feeling like they're becoming invisible, but not invisible because they're becoming so visibly aging. Like it's this kind of paradox. And they're feeling uncomfortable. Like they're feeling kind of shameful because they're aging and they don't want to feel that way, but they don't want to stop it. They don't know how to stop it.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. And that's what I find so interesting is the fact that we've even come to the point where we are so exhausted by feeling invisible. And I'm exhausted by the marketing and advertising that is coming my way to purchase and spend so much money on anti-aging this and that and treatments and creams and anything that will make us not appear as though we are aging, and how that contrasts with other cultures.
You know how I feel about it? Like, and I'm aware of this as I watch, but it's like every time somebody introduces me to something new, like there's the whole collagen craze these days, and there's, oh God, like it's a new trend all the time that is telling us this is the quick fix. This is the thing that is going to keep you looking youthful. And it's the miracle cure. And I always feel like when I hear about a new one that this pressure to be doing it, and like I've been missing out. Like oh my God, all these people are doing this and I'm not doing this. And maybe I'm looking older than I could because I'm not doing that thing.
Yes, I have felt that. Totally. And that is a low grade shame.
It is. The shame is actually not exactly from the feeling like I'm missing something, but I suppose it is.
No, but from the way that, the second part of what you said.
It's like how I'm looking. Because I still like, it's so deeply ingrained. Like, even though I don't want to care that I'm aging, It's so deeply ingrained at a cellular level in my psyche that I can't stop myself. Like I've been having this fight with myself lately because you and I stand for aging as we're meant to. And yet, like I'm looking at the gray hairs multiplying and I want to dye my hair. And I keep going, no, I'm not going to dye my hair because this is what I stand for. And I want other women to follow me and not dye their hair too, because gray hair is what we are meant to have as we get older. And it doesn't mean we're less attractive. Or it doesn't mean we're less beautiful. So it bugs me that I have to have this internal conflict all the time. And I know that it's bothering other people, not so much that they have to have the conflict because maybe they're not there yet. But I know it bugs them that that they're feeling a little bit shameful that they're getting older. Like I'm especially against these when I'm comparing myself against these younger moms. I always feel like I'm being stared at because I look older.
This is what I find so interesting about the I don't care movement. And I feel like that's a whole other podcast episode, but do you know this movement that's on, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok? There's a lot of people saying, I don't care anymore. And yet they do still care. The people who say, well, I don't care what people think anymore.
Yes.
I'm no longer going to keep quiet about this, are the same people who are getting their hair dyed. So it is a bit of a paradox. They're in some ways they don't care, but in other ways they very much do.
Yeah. And don't want to admit it.
Yeah. Or even notice it. Like, because it is just so normal to dye your hair. Like everybody dyes their hair. I don't. You don't.
No.
But
I might.
Most of my friends do.
I need a haircut and I might do it. We'll see. So some other things, so that we talked about like some of these symptoms. So feeling a little bit invisible, tired or exhausted from trying to keep up. And that's not just, so let's just apply this as well, not just to our looks, but it's feeling invisible, like sometimes in the workplace, like you're being passed over for a promotion because the younger people are up and coming and they have new ideas and more energy and whatever. And exhausted from keeping up isn't just from keeping up with the latest anti-aging trend. It's performing and producing and proving that we're relevant, especially in the workplace. Like, especially if you work in corporate, that is such a, I've talked to so many women, and actually there's research on this as well, that women feel they don't want to talk about their aging because they just want to appear more youthful, because they don't want other people to believe they're less capable or that the brain fog is holding them back. So they want to appear more youthful, yet they also want to appear mature because of their experience that they have. And that's an asset. So there's this conflict happening in workplaces.
Yes, definitely in workplaces. I have certainly felt it just kind of out on the street, like I've walked up to, it's not often that I go to a bar these days, but I have found myself going to get a drink at the bar, at a crowded one, and continuously being overlooked for all the younger people who are lined up.
Yes, becoming invisible
to get their drinks. And I'm like, wait, hello, I'm here.
Yeah. And that makes us feel resentful of the younger crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can.
Definitely.
Like I'm sometimes like, oh,
yep.
or maybe not even resentful, but envious of my own youth. Like sometimes I'm just like, oh, I wish I just had my youth back.
Which also brings up something we've talked a lot about, which is grief around our changing bodies, grief for the person we used to be, the energy we used to have, the body we used to have, the looks we used to have. So that can come with grief, the wishing that you had that back. That can be a loss. It can feel like a loss.
Yeah, it can feel fearful, like afraid of getting older, afraid of losing your edge. I definitely have a bit of that. I can admit to that. Can see that.
My edge. Yep.
Yeah, my memory, my energy. And so I think anyone who is stuck in this place we're talking about, these are some of the things that they're feeling, right?
And it really leads to, I don't know what to call this, but it's a never-ending treadmill of anti-aging creams and whatever is your thing to appear younger, to feel younger, to stay relevant, stay visible in today's society. It could be something very physical, or it could be something less so.
It's basically the anti-aging treadmill. And it is a treadmill because you can't get off it. Like our bodies age. That's part of life.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're absolutely on a circle, a hamster wheel, if you're on it.
Yeah. And I find, or at least I've been told, I have not had Botox, but once you have it once, you kind of need to keep going.
Oh, I didn't know that. Why? Because it gets like more saggy after?
I don't know.
Or wrinkly or whatever.
I don't know whether you just notice it more because you've had it. And so then when it starts to wear off, then it feels more noticeable. But I'm told that like once you start, it's really hard to stop.
Interesting. Well, Botox is a neurotoxin. So putting a toxin into your skin is likely going to, I don't know, kill off a few cells or something. It's going to have an effect.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
It's a little like the eyelash extensions. I tried those a couple times. And when I let them grow out, my eyelashes underneath were very short and sparse. And it took a while before they really grew in fully again. So there's just a couple of times for me, it was a time-saving thing more than anything else. I just didn't want to be bothered to put on mascara.
All right. So this anti-aging treadmill is like, we're positioning this as the enemy. Sort of. Like it's a toxic way to go through life. Really.
Yes. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This cultural script norm that says we don't have value anymore as we age. Our value was when we were fertile, young, youthful, energetic, everything else.
Prenatalism at its best.
That's true. So, Sheri, you've done some research on this in terms of the science. And we don't have to get overly scientific, but I did find a couple of the facts you were talking about quite profound and really provoke some thought around our purpose past menopause.
Yes. So as I was saying to you, either before we started this or maybe at the beginning, back in 2012, I had read this book called Healthy at 100. I think the author is John Robbins, but we'll link that up in the show notes. And I was only about 40 when I read it. So I hadn't gone through menopause, but what really stood out to me, I was reading it at the time from the perspective of how do we stay physically healthy until we die, rather than getting sick. And the author studied 4 different ancient tribes that still exist today. The Okinawa was one. The Q'ero was another, which is the last of the Inca in Peru. There was the Abkhazia in southern Russia. Dr. Mindy Pelz talks about the Hadza tribe in Tanzania. And a commonality within all of these tribes is that the elders elder women in particular are revered, and they play some really important roles in those cultures.
It's so opposite of the way our Western culture thinks about elderly women or even midlife women. It's
exactly.
crazy.
I mean, one of these studies on the Abkhazia, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. I've only ever read it. I've never heard anybody say the word Abkhazia. They actually will lie about their age as well, but they lie in the opposite direction. So they'll lie and say that they're older than they are, whereas we all want to say that we're younger than we are, and we get offended when somebody, I've started getting asked whether I hit the senior discount.
I know, I've been getting retirement
age,
stuff
which
in the mail, and although sure,
and people always
there was.
Sorry, I was just going to say people are always very they're very wary of offending when they ask. They're like, I just ask everybody because I don't want anybody to miss out on the discount. And it's only 55 in a lot of these places. It's not 65. So anyways, I think I cut you off. What you were
There was a time when I did lie about my age in the opposite direction.
Yes. Yes, because
before I hit,
we looked younger. Yes.
And actually, even when I was of drinking age, because of obvious reasons, even when we were of drinking age, when I was in my early 20s, I wanted to look older because I wanted people to think when I hit the workplace that I had the experience that I needed to excel in my career. So anyway, but yes, as I have gotten older, and I watched my 40-something friends get really excited when we were in Miami back in March, and a couple of them got asked for ID.
I got asked for ID during COVID. I was asked for ID at the liquor store, and I would have been 48, 49 at the time. And granted, I had a mask on. And the sales rep asked me to lower my mask so that he could see my face. And then he looked at my license and he said, "Oh, that is you. Well, you look really young for your age." And I went home and I told everybody. I was so excited. I got asked for ID at the liquor store, even though I had and then I thought about it afterwards and I'm like, why is this such a compliment that I look younger than I am?
I know.
And in these other cultures, that's actually not a compliment.
Right.
So that was really interesting. But the piece that I want to get to, Jen, because we're going to talk a lot more about these tribes in our next episode. But what I really wanted to get to today was the roles that females play beyond menopause. And this was really fascinating to me when I realized this a few years ago. I was doing some research and realized that humans are one of only 4 or 5, a handful of species on Earth that live beyond their fertile years, that live into menopause. There's a couple of species of whales. Yeah, there's only killer whales, pilot whales. There's emerging evidence that the beluga whales also live into menopause. And then there's some emerging evidence that chimpanzees are living into menopause. And so they've studied why, what's the evolutionary purpose of these animals living beyond their fertile years. And I've heard a lot of, even a naturopath recently that we were talking about earlier had said, well, we didn't used to live beyond our fertile years. It's our disease control and vaccines and all of that is it's our healthcare that's actually helping us to live longer. And that's actually not true. There's tons of evidence out there that shows that we lived well beyond menopause many, many years ago. And these tribes that have no access to modern medicine are living well into menopause. That's not because they're vaccinated or because they have access to cancer drugs or whatever.
It's the same in that documentary called The Blue Zones, which are similar to, they're not exactly the same ones as these tribes, but where people tend to live to 100, and they also tend to they're a little bit isolated from modern day society, and they're not staying alive to 100 because of modern medicine. That's not why.
Mm-hmm. No, exactly. No. So what they found in these whale species is that it's the grandmothers who hold information about where food is. They have long, long memories. And so beyond their fertile years, it's the grandmothers that actually step into a leadership role and guide their pods to food. And they're finding the same thing in the Hadza tribe, in some of these other tribes I mentioned earlier, that you don't even have to be a grandmother. It's the women who are beyond their fertile years that not only do they have memory, like they are the library of where to find food, they also have energy to do that. So the energy that they had put into raising children, fertilizing eggs within their body, like that takes a tremendous amount of calories, of energy that is now intended, like your body is reorganizing so that it can take on this new role, to have energy to put into these other roles within the tribe. It's today's society or today's environment and the way that we live that causes so many symptoms like exhaustion that prevent us from actually stepping into that.
Oh, I find that just so fascinating. It's like the older matriarchs are the leaders and they hold the cultural consciousness. Just sit with that for a second. That is the most important role in a tribe, or in a pod of whales, because they will die off without that.
And they do. So what they found in these pods of whales is that the pods with the oldest matriarchs were the ones that were the healthiest pods. Isn't that profound? It blows my mind.
It turns everything that we believe about aging, and women aging in particular, on its head. And it feels so good. To think about, okay, I no longer need to put energy into raising children, although I do, because of our modern science, I do. But most women in their 50s do not need to put energy into their children or creating children even. And so they redirect that energy, their body redirects that energy toward important leadership roles. That just feels so good.
And can you imagine how our world would change, or how Western society would change, if we, as women in midlife, stepped into that instead of this belief that age is just a decline and we become invisible and irrelevant?
I mean, for some people that might be scary, but yes, imagine what would happen with all of the world's problems. They'd be getting solved. But instead, we were told that no, it's decline. It's all downhill from here. And stay small and don't do the things that light you up and that could actually change the world. So many women stay small and they don't. And so the problems aren't getting solved. I lost my train of thought. And they're actually then probably dying sooner than they needed to, because when we think it's a decline, it becomes a decline. That's also well researched that, when you believe you are declining, you will decline.
Now, there's something that I just want to go back to. And I just want to, well, first of all, just give some credit to the person who actually did the studies on the Hadza people, because that was actually back in the 1990s. And this is like what we're just starting to talk about now. And so what she called it was the grandmother hypothesis. And it was an anthropologist. Her name is Kristen Hawkes. And she did this study of the Hadza people in Tanzania. And this was really interesting to me. What she expected to find was older women foraging to feed themselves. But instead, they were actually, the grandmothers were actually, or the women in menopause were the most productive food gatherers in the entire group. Like, they were outworking women who were decades younger than them.
It shouldn't be amazing, actually.
So, yeah. And it's our culture. I know it shouldn't. Like, when you think about it, all this energy, this energy that went towards, even just within our own bodies, even if you're like me and you don't have children to raise, all this energy is going towards creating eggs. And then on top of that, the women who are also creating eggs and taking care of children, that's a ton of energy that you're no longer spending. So it makes sense to me that all that energy gets freed up. But we're taught or conditioned to believe that, well, women just get more tired as they get older. We have less energy as we get older. We have all these things that, like, it's not just cognitively we decline, physically we decline, energetically we decline. So that's just a narrative that we've been fed. And like this Hadza tribe is showing that that's completely backwards. It's not true. And as you said, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. If we believe that we're going to decline, then we do.
I'm thinking about this tribe that friends of mine were doing research on in South Africa. And there were all these, it was a community that was living in poverty in kind of the middle of nowhere. And there were missionaries and all these not-for-profits that were trying to bring in water systems and all this modern stuff. And they didn't want it. And one of the reasons was that they looked at what the different roles were within this community. And the women who were past childbearing were the ones going to collect water. They had all these functions. And I remember the collecting water, like she still had to go down to the river to collect water. And that was her role. And if they were going to bring this water system in, she didn't have a role anymore. And it's similar but different. That's not positioning her as a matriarch, but it is positioning her as having a role. Actually a very important one, because she would get up before the entire family, make sure the water was collected. She would carry it back. Water's heavy. She would boil it and have it ready for cooking with by the time the rest of the family got up. And she didn't want to give that up, because then her role was gone, and then her reason for living was gone.
And that's something that we also hear from women our age. They want meaning. They want fulfillment.
Mm-hmm. And our modern society has taken so much of that away, because we don't need somebody to tell the stories anymore. We have the internet for that. We have like 1 million. ChatGPT can make a story up for me in 5 seconds. We don't need people to keep this collective consciousness, this information about where the food was and how to find new or areas of food that hadn't been visited in years. Like, we've taken this away. And so women are looking I think, for new purpose.
And, something that you just said, we don't need that anymore. And yet we kind of do,
Well,
like we're losing.
You're right. We do.
Yeah. We're losing so much knowledge just because we're not actually asking our elders about it. We no longer know what are the natural plants that do things for our bodies. What did our ancestors believe? Other than what is written, we don't have our own personal line of stories anymore because we're not interested. So,
yeah. So what do we do with this knowledge, Cher?
Well, number one, to me, what this did for me was just give me a whole new perspective on aging. So even if our society still does not revere our elders in Western culture, what I always say, coming back to one of our key teachings that is a through line for everything we do is our own self-worth. And I can see, at least, I don't need external validation that I am worthy.
Or valuable to society.
Right. So even if externally our culture is saying that I'm not, it actually, when we need that external validation, when we're looking for external validation, we tend to outsource our worthiness instead of finding it inherently. And I know that's difficult to embody that, but if we continue to rely,
worthiness
it's felt, yeah,
it's a felt sense, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And
you can't think your way into worthiness.
No, but what that does reinforce for me is that I don't need external society to tell me, or I'm not going to wait for them to tell me that I'm worthy. And I will behave differently if I believe in my own worthiness. I won't go and get my hair colored because that doesn't matter what somebody else thinks. I know that I'm inherently worthy even if I have gray hair.
Yeah, I do think it's a battle, Cher. Yes, I think that different perspective helps us to reframe this in our own minds and to start cognitively shifting to a new mindset and talking about it, because the more people that talk about this, how it's not a decline. We don't have to do all the physical things to appear more youthful or try to be more youthful when we are inherently worthy as we are, and we have worth in society as women over 50 or 45 or whatever the number is. And the next step then is to create that felt sense.
Yes. And the beginning, where we always start is simply to notice. It's just to this just reframes something that I had always just sort of believed. So this just gives me a whole new perspective on, so it was actually evolution that selected for these women in menopause to survive. They were required for the survival of the larger community.
Yeah, there's a reason. It's not just modern science, or in fact, it's the opposite of modern science. I find it so interesting that it was whales and people, that those are the two species. Knowing that, and I have a little bit of knowledge that whales are a very intelligent species. So I find that whole, that those are the two, and it wasn't gorillas and people, or wasn't something we would see as closer to our genetic makeup.
Yeah, I agree. And we do know that whales are a very social species. And the other one that came up in the research was Asian elephants. And we know that elephants are also very social, and it's the matriarchs that are the leaders of their, I forget what they're not called. I mean, whales are called pods in their,
I forget what elephants are called
in their groups, but I forget what elephants are called.
I think it's a herd.
Herds. Yes, a herd, of course.
One other thing I want to say before we close this out, Cher, is our modern society has also made it very difficult to look up to the grandmothers in this society for the knowledge that they have. And an example coming to mind is, we have family members who, like aunts and mom, who will always give me these anecdotes and that I see as wives' tales. And we discount them, like things like when I'm sick, like what did she say? I don't know. We have an aunt that said, put a mustard plaster put that on your chest for, whatever. And I sort of discount it because Western medicine hasn't directly said that that's a good remedy. But yet I've gone to my Chinese doctor who has said that exact same thing, which gave it a little more credibility because I trust my Chinese doctor. But there was a part of me that's still like, oh, that still seems kind of out there and like old wives' tale-ish. So this is a really hard reframe to embody, there are so many things working against us.
Well, and just the fact that we have been, especially over the last 5 years, been very conditioned to follow the science. It's only true if science has proved it. And you and I both know science, there's never any hard proof. Like, look at all of the things that were science and then were discounted later. So there's science, there's a study, but then that study can always be criticized, or there's something that comes up, it can't be repeated, or so science is never truth. And yet our society puts a lot of value on science as truth. We believe it is truth. So the other thing, just to answer your question, what do we do with this? So simply becoming aware of this information might help to shift some beliefs for midlife women that, oh, maybe we do actually have value. Maybe it doesn't matter that society tells us we're invisible. We can stand up and empower ourselves anyway.
I like that.
But the other thing that we really want to talk about on the next episode is not just the fact that these grandmothers or these menopausal women were a requirement for the tribe, but they were leaders. They were revered. And in those tribes, these cultures that still live today that are very remote, that the elders are still revered in those cultures as well. So our next step is, how can we take this information, and we've begun the reframe of the midlife woman in our role in society, but how do we now step into that? And to me, that's leadership, whether it's leading people at work, whether it's leading your family in a different way. And that is something that particularly, actually, it doesn't even matter. I was going to say particularly mothers, but even I see my role in our family, extended family, as different now that, I don't know, I've gained more wisdom, and my nieces and nephew are growing up, and I'm interacting with everybody in a different way. So, or it may be, just leading your own life. Like maybe there's just a way of being inside of your own life, your own humanity. And that's what I really want to talk about on the next episode.
I love it. Well, let's close out there, and we'll see our listeners back in the next episode.
Okay. And if you found this episode interesting or valuable or enlightening, as Jen and I did, share it with a friend, because there's a ripple effect here. You sharing this is going to get the word out that we are not invisible. And this is a really empowering message that we hope you'll share.
Absolutely.